Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we have an interesting story with some interesting commentary, and it is the story of Yaakov, our forefather Yaakov, and we're also going to find out why we are called Jews. So there's some interesting explanation there. So first with the story of Yaakov. Yaakov has to escape from his home. So he had a wonderful life with his family in Canaan, which today is Israel, but he had to escape. He had to escape because of his brother Esav. His brother Esav was angry at him for stealing his blessings. We talked about that last week. And Yaakov had to run away to protect himself from Esav's anger. He was afraid that Esav was going to kill him. Where did he run to? So he left Israel and headed to the city of Haran, where his uncle Lavan lived. He was going to stay at his uncle's place for a while, a long while, until things would calm down and he'd be able to get back together with his brother and come back home to the land of Israel. And the story of the Torah portion begins with Yaakov's journey, heading out of Israel and towards the city of Haran. And what it says, the first thing it says is, Vayetze Yaakov, Yaakov left, and he encountered a place. Okay, so very interesting language to use. He encountered a place. And the commentaries say that this was, in fact, the Temple Mount. So the future place of the Holy Temple. It was also the place where the binding of Isaac took place. So this was a very holy place and a very special place. And Yaakov encountered this place, not realizing the holiness of the place and how special it was. But since the day was coming to an end, the sun was setting, he decided to set up for the night and get some rest. So what he did was he put some stones around his head for protection, and he lay down to go to sleep. He falls asleep, and Yaakov has a dream. In the dream, he sees a ladder that reaches all the way up to the heavens, and there are angels going up and going down. And in the middle of all of this, God appears to Yaakov in the dream, and he tells him that this entire land would be given as a gift to his descendants, to Yaakov's descendants, and God would also protect Yaakov throughout his journey while away from home, and God would bring him back safely to his home, to Israel. So these were the two things that Yaakov heard in the dream. First, that the land of Israel would be given to the Jewish people, and also that he would be protected by God throughout his journey until he returns home. Now, I just want to take a moment to show all of us that this is actually the story of our lives. This is the story of you. The story of Yaakov is actually the story of you. And the reason for that is because Yaakov was leading a very nice life and a very comfortable life and a very spiritual life. He spent all of his time studying Torah. He spent his time praying. He was in his own bubble. He was in a spiritual bubble, and it was a wonderful life. It was a good life. And all of a sudden, in the middle of his wonderful life, he had to, so it suddenly, it was suddenly interrupted. And out of the blue, he had to escape, the life that he was used to and enter into a new world, a world of lies, a world of deception, a world of betrayal. We're going to talk a little bit later how his uncle Lavan repeatedly deceived him and betrayed him. So he was going into a difficult situation, and it was in this situation where he would build a new life for himself, build a family, and build a business. Why is this the story of you? It's the story of you because this is exactly what happened to our souls. What happened was our soul was having a good life and hanging out somewhere up in heaven. And it was a spiritual life. It was a good life, a positive life, only good things for the soul. And all of a sudden, the soul was sent away from its comfortable place and sent into this world to be born and to become you, and to come into this world and fulfill its mission. And it's a dark world spiritually compared to where the soul is coming from. So just like Yaakov, the soul is coming to a place, leaving the place where it's comfortable, leaving the place of its home, and coming into a new situation, a difficult situation, and a dark situation, to a place with his tough conditions. So this is actually the story of us. The soul is doing exactly what happened with Yaakov. Now, the end of the story is that it was especially in this difficult situation, in Yaakov's difficult circumstances, that he became so successful, and he became the person who he was. And he built a beautiful family. He built a very successful business. He was very wealthy. And it's interesting to point out that it was specifically in this difficult situation that Yaakov became so successful, and the life that he built, and the life that he's famous for is primarily these 20 years that he spent, away from his home, away from Israel, away from the spirituality, so to speak, away from his father, away from his mother. And this is where he really built something beautiful and reached success. And the same thing is with us. The same thing is with the soul. The soul has a wonderful life up in heaven, but the soul could only reach its greatest potential, and the soul could only fulfill its actual mission when it comes into this world, a place where it's spiritually dark, a place where there are lies. The truth is not clear. It's especially in this place, it's only in this place that the soul could maximize and reach its full potential and the reason for its existence. So this is how the story of Yaakov is actually the story of all of us. So back to the story, Yaakov encountered a place. Now, the word encountered is a very unusual word, like we mentioned before. And some of the commentaries say that this is referring to prayer. So Yaakov stopped to say a prayer. Now we know that each of our forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, each instituted one of the 3 daily prayers. So there are three forefathers, and they each instituted one prayer. So Avram instituted the morning prayer, Shacharit. Yitzchak instituted the afternoon prayer, which is called Mincha, and Yaakov, who we're talking about now, instituted the evening prayer known as Arvit or Ma'ariv. Now, it's interesting to pay attention to the relationship and to the connection between the person and the prayer that they composed. And it's very fascinating because Avram, he was the one who instituted the morning prayer, and he also represents the morning. How does Avram represent the morning? Just like the morning brings a new day, Avram's entire life was about bringing a new knowledge of God to the world. So Avram was an initiator. he started something new. He brought a new knowledge of God, something that nobody believed in, nobody talked about before, the idea of monotheism. And this is why Avram represents the morning. Just like the morning brings a new day, Avram brought a new knowledge to the world. Now Yitzchak represents the afternoon, because just like the afternoon has nothing new about it, it's just the continuation of the day. In a very similar way, Yitzchak's life was exactly that, because there was nothing transformative, or there was no major change about Yitzchak's way of life or Yitzchak's path. In fact, last week we talked about how he was a well digger, and the wells that he dug were the same wells that his father dug, just they were covered up by enemies or whoever it was. So actually, in Yitzchak's work itself, you can see that there was nothing new about it. He was just redoing what was already done before. So Yitzchak is the afternoon guy. There's nothing new, but he represents continuing the work and continuing the chain. So sometimes it's quite an achievement to do something new, but it's also an achievement to keep going, to stay the course, and to continue the chain so that it doesn't stop. So that's also an achievement in its own right. Now Yaakov represents the night. He instituted the evening prayer. He represents the night. And I think this makes sense, because Yaakov, we could relate to this and we could understand this, because as we're seeing now in this story, in this week's Torah portion, Yaakov knows the darkness of the world. He knows the fear. He knows what it means to run away. He knows what it means to fight. Eventually, he's going to have to stand up for himself in that way as well. So Yaakov represents the night, because he had to deal with all of this hardship in a way more than his father and grandfather. Now, each of these three, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, represent a unique Jewish experience. So also using the language that the Torah uses for them praying, right? So I'll read you the text that says that Avram rose early in the morning to the place where he had stood before God. Okay, he rose early in the morning to the place where he stood before God. So this shows how Avram is the initiator, like we said before. He started something new. And this represents a certain Jewish experience. This represents a person when they are seeking God and making the journey and looking for God. So just like Avram found God on his own, the same is with anyone who has this experience of looking, of searching, of looking and learning to find out more about their heritage, more about God. So that's one type of Jewish experience. Then you have Yitzchak, who is the afternoon guy. What is the language that the Torah uses for his prayer? It uses the language of sicha, which means conversation. And this is the kind of relationship with God. Sicha, what is a conversation? Where you have two people having a dialogue. So that's kind of where both God and the person are, in a way, active partners in this relationship. So the person is aware of God, is aware that God is listening, and there's this kind of like this two-way connection between them. So that's with Yitzchak. And with Yaakov is completely different. Yaakov, the word that we mentioned before, and the word that the Torah uses for Yaakov is vayifga, encountered. What is the idea of encountering something? So when you encounter something, it's not expected. right? It's a surprise. It just happens suddenly. And so Yaakov did not initiate. He did not initiate a certain connection. He also was not an active partner in a certain dialogue, because in fact, where were his thoughts? Where was his mind? His mind was in a completely different place. He was thinking about where he was coming from. He was thinking about Esav. He was running away from his brother. He was also thinking about where he was going to. He was heading to Haran, to a place, to a foreign place, to his uncle's house where there would be new challenges. So his mind was in other places. So, and all of a sudden, he encountered God, so to speak. So unexpected, a surprise, nothing to do with his work or his initiation or his knowledge or his doing something, his action. There was none of that. There was just suddenly there was a vision of God, a vision of angels in the dream, a ladder connecting heaven to earth. And it's not something that Yaakov prepared for. It was completely unexpected and a total surprise. Now, what does this represent in a Jewish? What type of Jewish experience does this represent? It represents when out of the blue, you all of a sudden have a certain inspiration. You have a certain maybe calling to say, let me pay attention to my Judaism. Let me pay attention to my soul. Let me do something for someone else. Let me do something for God. So all of a sudden, it's not, you were thinking about something else. You were doing something else. And all of a sudden this popped into your head. All of a sudden this took over your mind and your heart and your thinking at that moment. That's this Jewish experience that sometimes people have. Sometimes people have it once a year on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. Sometimes you might have this experience more often. But this is the type of experience where you didn't work for it and you didn't do anything you didn't do anything to feel this way. It just came. It just came. It was just an inspiration came in a way, if you want to call it that, or in a way, it's a feeling that you're not alone and God is with you. It could come in different forms, but this is the idea. And when does this sometimes happen? At least in the story of Yaakov, when did this happen? When did he get this? This feeling that he's not alone and God coming to him and saying, I'm going to look after you. This happens literally and metaphorically at night, right? The sun was setting and Yaakov was going to sleep. At night is when it represents the feeling of loneliness, of darkness. You might be afraid, you might be in despair. And this is when more often than not, there could be this, this call and this feeling and inspiration that you're not alone. This is what happened to Yaakov. Yaakov was afraid. He was running away from Esav, who wanted to kill him. He was heading to Haran, where he knew his uncle was not an honest man, but that was the only place he had to go. And he was very afraid and very worried. And God came to him in a dream and reassured him. And God made it clear that he's not alone and God is watching over him. And this is a Jewish experience that some people have at certain times. And the idea is what we should do is take this inspiration and try to translate it into motivation and the power to stand up and stay the course and keep doing what you're doing, because someone is watching out for you, someone is looking out for you, and it's going to be okay. So it's God saying you're not alone. And it's up to us to translate that and to kind of have the confidence and the reassurance that in fact it will be okay, and that God will look after us. So here we have the three forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They each instituted one prayer, morning, afternoon, night. The morning, afternoon, night. They are very connected to who they are as people and what they accomplished in their life, and it also each one represents a unique Jewish experience. Avram is the experience of somebody searching for God. Yitzchak is the experience of someone having a dialogue with God. And Yaakov represents the person who is who just has this surprise inspiration, if you will. And at that moment, the important thing to do is not just let the inspiration fade away, but actually harness it and utilize it to help you in life and in this difficult time. So that is the story of the three prayers. One more small idea before we continue on with the story and the idea of why we are called Jews. I didn't forget about that, don't worry. What did Yaakov do before he lay down to rest, before he lay down to sleep? He put stones around his head for protection, maybe from animals, maybe from other things, I don't know. Now, why do you think Yaakov would only put stones around his head? What about the rest of his body? Why didn't he? Where's the protection for the rest of his body? Quite strange. So I don't know the practical answer. It could be that maybe the head is the most important part of the body. I don't know if that's such a great answer, because you have the heart. I mean, you have some other vital organs that you can't live without. So why only the head? So I don't know that I don't think I have a practical answer. But one thing's for sure is that there is a deeper message here as well. The deeper message is that Yaakov knew where he was going. He knew that he was leaving his spiritual bubble. He knew that he was leaving his father's house, a place where holiness is a reality, a place where God is something real and it's felt. And he was going to Haran, to the opposite kind of place, where there is the opposite kind of atmosphere. He was going to a place where it was considered to be the most ungodly place. It was a place where God was disappointed with the people. It was a place of corruption. It was a place of lies, a place of deception. So Yaakov knew where he was going, and he knew that this was not really his place. He was just going there, to be safe. He had to run away. But what Yaakov did was he surrounded his head with stones, and that represented the idea of protecting your mind and protecting your head. And that means that when you're going to a place where there are negative influences, to put it mildly, a place where everything Yaakov stands for is the people there have no regard for everything Yaakov stands for. In order to stay true to his values, in order to stay true to his morals, in order to stay true to everything he stands for, he had to concentrate and to be focused on all of the things that are important to him. So he had to, in a way, protect his mind so he could be successful at what he does, and at the same time stay true to who he is and stay true to everything that he stands for. And so I don't know exactly the practical purpose for surrounding your head with stones, but this is the idea of protecting your mind protecting your mind to be able to stay focused and to stay the course, even in a place where everyone, literally everyone, is against all of your beliefs, and the complete opposite of holiness, goodness, and godliness. So that's the story of Yaakov's placing stones around his head. What happened when Yaakov woke up? All of a sudden, he realized that he was in a holy place. He understood the holiness. He understood the importance and the specialty of the place. And immediately when he woke up, he erected a monument. And he called this place Bet El, which means the house of God, the house of God. And he kind of did this a little service, a little sacrifice, because he recognized that this place was a very holy, a very special place. And at that moment he said to God, he said that I promise to give 10% of all of my success and all of my earnings. I promise to dedicate that to God. And Yaakov was promised that he would come home safely and that he would be successful. And so he made this promise, and he said that when he does return home, he will give 10% of his success, of his earnings, to God. So when God's promise comes true, this was the pledge that Yaakov made. So finally, after a long journey, Yaakov finally reaches the house of his uncle Lavan. So first he stays there for a little while, about a month, when Lavan offers him a job. He offers him the job of working with his cattle, to be the shepherd for his sheep, for his flocks, whatever it was. And so Yaakov agreed. So Lavan asked him, what type of wages would you like? What type of compensation do you wish for? And so Yaakov said something perhaps very unusual. Lavan had two daughters. The older one was Leah, and the younger one was Rachel. And Yaakov loved Rachel. And so he said to Lavan, he said, I will serve you, I will work for you for 7 years in exchange for Rachel, for giving me Rachel's hand in marriage. Okay, now I'm not sure why he had to negotiate that way. But that's in fact what happened. He loved Rachel, and he said, I will work for you for 7 years, if you give me her hand in marriage. And Lavan accepted. I mean, sounds like an easy deal on Lavan's part. If they love each other, they should probably get married anyways. But that is, I don't know if we learn negotiating skills from Yaakov. I think we could learn a lot of things from him. I'm not sure if we're going to learn negotiating skills from him. Okay, anyways, 7 years go by, and Yaakov says, okay, the time has come, and keep your word and your side of the deal. And so Lavan prepares a wedding feast, and he organizes all the wedding arrangements. But at the last moment, Lavan tricked Yaakov, and he switched the girls. So he knew that Yaakov loved Rachel, and he wanted to marry Rachel. But at the last moment, he took Rachel's identical sister. They were identical, and he put her, in the bridal room, and was getting her prepared for the wedding. Now, her face was evening. Her face was covered under the chuppah, under the wedding canopy. And before you knew it, they were married. They were home together. Like I said, they were identical sisters. So it wasn't difficult for Leah to pretend like she was Rachel. And before you knew it, they were married. And Yaakov wakes up in the morning and he realizes that, in fact, he was tricked. This is not the love of his life. This is not Rachel. This is Leah. And so he comes to protest to Lavan. And Lavan says, I apologize, but this is the tradition in our city. We don't marry off the younger one before the older one is married. So this is what I had to do. I had no choice. Okay. He was tricked. He was deceived by Lavan. But Lavan said, don't worry, I will give you Rachel as well. You can marry Rachel if you work for me for another 7 years. So in those days, it was quite common for people to be married to more than one woman. And Yaakov married Rachel as well. And after that, he had to work for another 7 years. Now, just something about Rachel, who she was, and also to understand how Yaakov got into this mess. Yaakov, after 7 years of working for his uncle, he knew that his uncle was a liar. He knew that his uncle was a cheater. So he didn't trust that he would actually stay true to his word and send Rachel to the wedding and to the chuppah, to the wedding canopy. He didn't trust his uncle at all at that time. So what did Yaakov do? Yaakov was clever. He gave Rachel a set of codes, password. And the plan was that just before, at the ceremony, from behind the veil, Yaakov would ask for the codes. She would respond with the password, and that's how he would know that this is in fact Rachel. So he knew what he was dealing with 7 years in. So what happened? Where did it go wrong? So in fact, Rachel saw what was happening. She saw that at the last moment, instead of her having the opportunity to marry the person who she loved, instead, Lavan was preparing Leah. He sent Leah to the bridal room to prepare her, to dress her up. And Rachel realized that Leah was going to be the one who was going to be the star of the show. So Rachel immediately made a calculation. She realized that if she doesn't do anything, if she just stays silent, her older sister Leah would have tremendous embarrassment. Imagine that the whole town is at the wedding. She's at the center of it all. And all of a sudden, Yaakov realizes that he's being tricked. It's going to be a tremendous embarrassment for her sister. And so what she does is she goes to Leah and she gives Leah the codes. She gives Leah the passwords. And that's how Yaakov was tricked into marrying Leah, because he asked for the codes and he got the correct codes. So that's how it all happened. But in the morning, when he realized what happened, not only was Yaakov not angry with Rachel, but he became much more in love with Rachel. And that's because he's recognized how truly selfless she was, and how kind she was, that she was willing to put her dream on the side and to put herself completely on the side so that her sister shouldn't be embarrassed. So in fact, in the end, Yaakov married her as well. But that was a tremendous sacrifice on her part. But this only made Rachel even more attractive to Yaakov. Okay, I'm gonna skip some of the story and just go to the part where Leah has 4 children. First 4 children, they were all boys. A little bit different than our family. And she names them Leah. So at first, Rachel was not able to have children. In the end, she did have 2 children. But at first, she was not able to have children, and it was only Leah who had 4 children. And she named them Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. The most famous name is probably Yehuda or Judah in English. And this is where the name Jew comes from, right? In Hebrew, it's Yehudi. Yehudi means Jew. That comes from the word Yehuda, comes from the name Yehuda. In English, the name Jew comes from Judah. Now, there were 12 tribes at the end. So 12 children and 12 tribes. Why would all of the Jewish people be called the name Jew or Yehudi in Hebrew? Now, it's interesting to note that if you look in the entire Torah, and what I mean by that is the first 5 books, the 5 books of Moses, you will not see the word Jew even once. So even after the Jewish people officially became a people and they officially became a nation at the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, even at that point, you will not find the name Jew. You will never find the word Jew. What are the Jewish people called?
Israelites.
The Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. Or the children of Yaakov, or the children of Israel. Yaakov's name was later changed to Yisrael, to Israel. So they were called Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, or the children of Yaakov. It's only later that the Jewish people start to be called Jews, or Yehudim. I think the first place where it's mentioned is in the book of Esther, in the Megillah, about the story of Purim. It calls Mordechai Ish Yehudi, a Jewish person. Okay, so why are Jews called Jews? If only one of the 12 tribes were called Yehuda, Judah, why are all Jews called Jews? And I'll give you one quick answer, and then another longer answer. The short answer is that Judah, Yehuda, also comes from the Hebrew word hoda'ah, which means to acknowledge. And the explanation to the name and to the title Jew is that Jews acknowledge God, and they reject everything that is foreign to that belief. Okay, so they're called by this name Yehuda, by Judah, because of the other translation, because it also translates as acknowledged. They acknowledge God. So that is one reason why Jews are called Jews. But I'd like to share another reason, more related to the actual, to the more simple translation of the name Yehuda, of the name Judah. What is the translation of the word? What's the translation of the name Yehuda? Why did Leah name this baby Yehuda? And the answer is Yehuda comes from the word thanksgiving or gratitude, and she named him this name because she was thankful and because she was grateful for another beautiful blessing, another child. So why are all Jews called Jews? Why are they all called thanksgiving or gratitude? Why is that name that all Jews are called? And the answer is that there's something about thanksgiving that captures the essence of what it means to be Jewish, and the essence of the Jewish people. Okay, now to explain how this is so, what is it? What is it about Thanksgiving? What is it about gratitude that really captures who we are as Jewish people? So first, to talk about gratitude. Gratitude is, and Thanksgiving is not as popular as you would expect, right? It only is fair, and it's only right, and it's only kind to give thanks and to give gratitude where it's due. But people often have trouble with this. People wonder why people in their life are not always grateful or not always expressing thanks. Sometimes, why don't my children appreciate me enough? Why is my spouse not showing me more gratitude? Why are my coworkers or my employees or my employer, why are they taking me for granted? So very often in life, we're trying to figure out, why are people not showing thanks? Why are they not showing gratitude? Gratitude should be uh, should be given, and should be gratitude is, if you think about it, it's expected. So what is that all about? Why is there not enough gratitude and not enough thanks in life? And the answer is with the other translation of the word Yehuda. The answer is with the word acknowledgement. Why is it that we don't get, that there isn't enough gratitude or enough thanks? Or what causes people to express gratitude and thanks? That is when they acknowledge, and they're able to acknowledge, and they do acknowledge the other person's perspective and the other person's opinion. So thanks will be given and gratitude will be expressed when you realize the other person's perspective, when you realize where they're coming from, and you realize their opinion on things. So for example, a child will be grateful to a parent once they appreciate the sacrifice that the parent makes, once they realize where the parent is coming from, how much they invested, how much they do for the child. So it's about so in order for the child to truly feel grateful and gratitude and thanks, they have to know what it took, what type of sacrifice the parent had to make. And the same thing is with a spouse. A spouse is more likely to be grateful and to show gratitude when they understand where their spouse is coming from. To understand all of the thought and feeling and energy that was invested in one act, in one gift, or in one thing that is being shared. So when a spouse puts themselves in the other's shoes and realizes the investment, the energy, the excitement, the feeling that the other one invested, so that is the key to gratitude. That is how you can be sure, not be sure, but that is the way that you could truly appreciate and truly be thankful and express a real gratitude. So to be a Jew, back to our question, why are Jews called Jews? What is it about Thanksgiving that captures the essence of what a Jew is? To be a Jew is to be able and to actually acknowledge another person's perspective and another person's opinion. So to be able to experience someone else's pain, to feel someone else's pain, to be able to experience someone else's joy and happiness, and to feel it like you would feel your own happiness and your own joy. be able to being a Jew is being able to see the perspective of hope and joy, even in a difficult situation, even when there's great hardship. And this is also the connection to the story of Yaakov. This is the story of Yaakov. It was a difficult situation for him. And finally, a Jew has the responsibility to see the world from God's perspective. Okay, so giving gratitude is all about seeing the perspective of another and seeing and understanding and recognizing the opinion of another. And so by this, so in that way, why are we called Jews? Because we have the responsibility to see the world from God's perspective, and that means to recognize why we're here, to recognize that there is a mission, to recognize what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, and not from your own perspective only, but also from God's perspective, to see the world the way God sees it, so to speak, and to behave in the world the way God would want you to behave. And so this is the godly perspective that we have the responsibility to see and to carry, and of course to also realize, again through God's perspective, how everything comes from God. All our blessings, all our opportunities, everything that we have comes from God. And when we realize all of this, that is when we could show true thanks, and that is when we could express true gratitude, because we appreciate where it's coming from. We know where it's coming from. We appreciate where it's coming from. We understand, the investment in us, and this is what it means. This is one of the explanations of why we're called Jews and what it means to be a Jew. It means to show gratitude, to express thanks, and that could only truly be done when we recognize another's perspective. So seeing other people's perspective, to see where they're coming from, to experience what they experience, their pain, their joy, and also the responsibility to see the world through God's glasses, so to speak, to see it through God's perspective, and to understand why we're here and what God wants from us, and why, in His perspective, are we where we are, and how we're supposed to utilize how we're supposed to utilize the opportunities that we have, and to realize that everything, all the opportunities and all the blessings and everything in our life comes from God, and that is how we could show true gratitude. That is how we could show true thanksgiving to God. This is why, one of the explanations why we are called Jews, Yehuda, Yehudim, Jewish people. It's all about the gratitude and the thanks. So gratitude and thanks is really captures what it means to be Jewish.